One, one, two, one, 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 one. Hi, Gina.
Hi.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
Excellent, excellent.
Good.
It looks like it's just us again.
All right. Sounds good to me.
Yep, sort of eases my way in.
Yeah.
Let me share my screen. I think it's recording. Good. So,
Mhm.
perfect and good. So, let me just open this up as well, just in case anyone does decide to attend. I'm thinking it may be just us now on this session, which is nice. So, good. Okay. So, oh, I've just lost you. Oh, I hate it when I do that. Sorry, bear with me.
It's all right. I'm here.
Okay, that's and it's still you can still see the screen.
I can see you. Yeah.
And is the screen is the oh what's going on here? Oh, it's all happening this morning. Let's go. Can you see the slides?
Nope.
Okay, let me bear with me one sec. Sorry.
No worries. Take your time.
Okay, good. Now you should be able to see the screen.
Yep.
Good. So let's jump into session three. What I want to focus on today, a part of the agenda, is how do we open the consultation? Um, so we spent a bit of time, and we'll look at questioning again today, but we spent a bit of time on questioning skills and listening. But actually, the step before that is how do you open the consult? And the reason I do questioning first is because that's where, in a way, the biggest bang for your buck is. Because if you ask great questions through the process, you get great answers. Great answers leads to better outcomes for the practice in terms of patient satisfaction, patient satisfaction, revenue, et cetera, et cetera. So the questions is the key, but now we need to start putting that into a more coherent structure. So we're going to look at how do we open the consult, which is the stage before the questionings. But before we do, I always like to come back to how we learn. And so, what were your reflections since last time, or so far? As we said, we spent a bit of time on the questioning skills, listening. What sort of your takeaway? What are you doing? What's working? What's not working?
Um, I mean, not too much has changed. Still just working on asking the questions and listening and not. and going through the steps more slowly, building that relationship, having that patient trust me, like me, building rapport first before we're actually getting down to the actual reason that they're there.
Perfect. Perfect. And then, and how are you finding that? Are you sort of getting a different outcome? How's that going?
Um, yes, I feel like towards the when I do that, when I build more of that relationship, and I feel like towards the end of the consult, I feel like they're more inclined to answer questions that I'm asking them. Tying in the if they say, well, I have to get my calendar or whatever it is, I feel like I have more liberty to push that. Um, saying, well, our providers are booked out 2 weeks, and I say, well, we have something on this date. So I just proceed still, even though they say, um, I don't have my schedule yet, or, whatever they come back with, if they're not ready at that time for whatever reason.
Perfect. Perfect.
Feel comfortable moving forward as if they didn't say it.
Okay.
Um, Providing dates and going back to credentialing the providers, and they're booked out for this day, and so on. And sometimes they just, okay, that date's available, I'll book it. Um, so a lot of times I feel more comfortable to go there because I've asked the questions and I felt like I built a stronger connection with them.
Excellent. Excellent. No, I think that's that in itself is the answer. It's when the things we don't like about sales, in my mind, is when you're being talked to, and there isn't that connection. When you've understood by asking questions, you've got more of that relationship, more of that rapport. You may be doing similar things to that other salesperson, but because you understand what's important to them, you're able, as you say, to maybe just push things a little further forward. And so often we in sales, and I've seen it, we for a myriad of reasons, sometimes people need to be pushed over the line. They need that encouragement. They need that friend, and someone that they believe and trust.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. I'm, in a very similar, well, in a very different way, but it's very similar. I'm building out some reporting structures and some automations to generate more detailed reports on our contact center side. And obviously, I've spoken to my team, I've done some research, et cetera, et cetera. But I've actually got this guy in the UK that is doing all the automations and all the build out. And then yesterday he said, what you're trying to achieve, you'll be better off with this. And and it was like, okay, do it. And because
Yeah.
because he wasn't selling to me, and he's already paid as such. It was just, this is a better way of doing it. And I've just trusted him. It's like, and in 6 hours he's now giving me the reports I've been looking for a few months. And it was just, he had built that relationship. Again, he's not in a sales. Well, everything is a sale. In my mind, you're either selling for money, or you're selling a concept internally, or you're convincing your other half that we should go to Europe for next summer. It's all a sale in some way. We might not like to call it that, but it's about, as you say, having that relationship, taking it to another level, understanding them, and they then psychologically know that you have their best interests at heart.
Right.
And that's where it gets dangerous, because sometimes salespeople don't. But that's, again, you still, yeah, that's a whole different debate. Good.
Mhm.
Um, any other reflections? Anything that's not working? You've done this, and I always say you tried that, and it just clashed, or you could see the reaction in the patient's face, or
Not really. I don't think
okay,
so.
good. No, good. So I have these slides there because sometimes I thought we might reflect on them. But let's have a look at the sales conversation.
Mhm.
And at this stage, I just want to focus on really the first two elements. So there's the open. So this is the opening the consultation. Well, actually, what's really interesting, this is every sales conversation. Every conversation starts with an open. And that's how I think of this is we often think of this as once round. The reality is front desk should be going round this loop. In the consult, you go round the loop. Post consult, you go around the loop. Pre treatment, you can go around the loop. Different elements have more emphasis at different stages, but actually as a structure, you can go through the loop, go round the loop. And so the opening is that first step. It sets the tone. It sets the sort of, we've got into the questions now, which is step two. Let me just
Mhm.
bring that up. So we've got the questions starting to flow. Now we want to sort of now look at the process. So it sets the tone. I often think here, and again, interested in your thoughts, what works really well is tell them what's going to happen. uh, so obviously, first thing, welcome. We're really excited. I know you've spoken with front desk, and they mentioned that your daughter's getting married in the fall. Congratulations! Really exciting news. You must be, it's that sort of I often call it that sort of sometimes it's the noise, but it's the relationship building. It's that friendly piece. But also in that comes the okay, so today this is what's going to happen. And by laying out the sort of the next steps, it really sets the tone. And again, I think I may have shared this with you, maybe the other group last time. Um, Trip to the dentist recently with the other half, um, and sort of met the nurse. The dentist came in. Someone we hadn't met before came in at the end with the price. Literally just walked in. It was like, okay, so you've seen the doctor. Here's the price, and it was like $13,000. What's the outcome? Let's go and think about it. It
Mhm.
was just so crude in how it happened, and it was just, this. She was lovely, very sweet, very personable, but suddenly drops $13,000. And it's like, there you go. What do you want to do? And it's like, well, we want to think about it, and off we went, and you know, we're now looking at alternatives. So again, it's about understanding that whole process through this. But in simple terms, in that dentist, if she had introduced herself at the beginning and just almost did that, hi, I'm
Right.
Samantha. I'm going to come in at the end, but I just wanted to welcome you. You're going to be meeting the nurse, then the dentist, then I'll come back and we can talk about pricing and, scheduling. If you have any questions, I'm here. Even if it was as simple as that,
Yeah.
perfect. But actually, they hold such a key role. She needed to be part of the journey. And so that opening is set the scene, set the structure, uh,
Hmm.
and as you come out of the opening, there's your first open question. And then if I sort of go back, the first open question should be that big, broad open question that uncover the motivation. Now, we may already know from front desk that there's the upcoming wedding, but you can build on that with that first question. Um,
Mhm.
so that's how it sort of starts. Any any questions so far? Any thoughts on that?
Yes. So when you said, uncovering the motivation that should be before they even step in here for that consultation. So perhaps our front desk ladies, as a new patient, they're scheduling the consultations, asking at that time. Um, do you have any occasions coming up? Or the reason for the consultation, maybe digging a little bit deeper other than just booking the consult. So, because we don't do that here. So I think that would obviously help patient coordinator build that rapport. If we knew ahead of time, everybody likes to know that, oh, I'm important enough where they talked about me or they remembered this. So I think that's a good tip, having the front desk getting more involved in that, the beginning part of the journey.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one of the things that we do in our contact center a lot. Is not just booking the appointment; it's understanding that a motivation, that driver, and just being pedantic. Your question was, do you have any special occasion coming up? I always think people will answer no to that. Because it's a closed question, and and in a way, they think they just want to book the appointment. Our job is to take them on an emotional journey and demonstrate that
Mhm.
we're the right partner for them. So it's rather than saying, "Do you have a an event coming up?" Is it's almost be assumptive. What
Yeah.
events do you have coming up? What's coming up that I always like. What prompted you to reach out today?
Mhm.
and and again, I go back to my recent Botox, pop down to one of my clients and get some Botox. I was looking at the videos and I looked angry, and I'm not. I'm just concentrating with training and questioning and coaching that then I have this real strong anger look, and I'm not. But when I watched it, I thought, so what prompted me? It was because I look angry on video and I do a lot of training and I don't want to look angry because I'm not.
Right.
And and I don't want that to sort of have that, especially when you freeze it on, you take excerpts of things and put it onto social media, it then freezes and always the most angry looking freeze.
Yeah. Right.
So it's not too appealing really, is it? So yes, it's and then, but then when you dig down, and again, if your front desk can uncover that, so what's prompted this? What occasions do you have coming up that we should be aware
Mhm.
of? Um,
Yeah.
if there are none, they're going to say, "Oh, I don't. I just this is just a regular thing for me," or they share something,
And
and
then what if they say that? What if they say, I've just been wanting to come in, no occasions. So does the front desk take it a step further, or do they just simply note and then move on?
it all depends on it depends. I've seen it. I'm sure you have, where front desk asks the question, the patient coordinator asks the question, the nurse, asks question. They get with the doctor asks the questions, and then they just open up and tell you everything. And then the doctor looks at you and says, why didn't we know this? And it looks like you haven't done your job properly, but we actually, and sometimes that's people would share different things with different people. And I notice this. Sometimes I have my team phone someone and they don't say anything. And then I phone and, I'm the CEO
Right.
of the company and suddenly they open up and I'm just thinking, you could have you could have told someone else
Yeah.
this.
No, that happens a lot.
So yeah. So I think it's a case of, if we can get that information, get it, put it into the EMR, make sure the team then can reference that. Because again, the motivation is often going to be the thing that then helps close it at the end. If you can relate everything back to why they came here in the first place, so
Mhm.
that it just helps the process. If they're not sharing, again, you don't have to push it. But again, it can depend. You can sometimes, if you've got someone that's really a little bit cheeky on the front desk and can sort of, have a little bit of fun, whilst maintaining professionalism, then again, they can explore things.
Okay.
And again, that's the brand and how you want them to do certain things.
Mhm.
Any other questions?
Nope.
So opening sets the tone, lets them know what's happening. There's the welcome to, here's the practice, I'm Gina, etc. All of that is the opening. The key then is coming out with that first open question. Um, if they have uncovered the motivation, you can dig a little deeper. So let's go back to my example. I look, I look angry on video, and I don't want to look angry. You may have that information. Um, then your opening could be, I know you mentioned to front desk that you look angry on video. Why is this important for you? So you see how you're just taking it another level deeper. So
Yeah.
the fact that you've got that information, you can go, why is that important? And then you'd get me saying, well, I'm building a company, I'm doing this, I'm doing that,
Hmm.
I'm and I'm in an industry that um is all about aesthetics. So I don't, and then you can go, and so why is that important? You
You
can,
could always follow up with the why. You can do
yeah,
that all day
what
long.
when that's actually that's perfect. My first mentoring session, I logged onto the word why, and found, and of course I was working for IBM, so at 26, I'm thrust into meetings with people, and I'm naive and stupid and not really sure, and I'm dealing with some senior executives from big companies, and I used to just sit there and quiver. It was quite a scary environment, but um, that was my default. Was they would say something, I go why, and they would speak more, and I go but why, and that was just my default question to just dig. And then my mentor got hold of me and said, it is the perfect question, but just wrap around some words to soften it, because why and
You
how.
sound like a toddler.
Yeah, it is. It's why,
Right.
and so he got me sort of. So that's a really interesting point, and I'm really like just explore
Right.
that a little bit more. Why, why is that so important to you? And then as soon as you put that sort of wordsmith it changes the whole dynamic of the question. But it's still effectively why. And why is a great word. The other word that's very powerful is how. And I know it's one of the sort of six open questions. How gives you a process. So why gives you a reason and justification to something. So why are you doing this? So you get that reason, the justification, sometimes even the excuse. Why are you doing that? There's well, how do you do it? Gives you a process. So how, why are you going to make the decision versus how are you going to make a decision? Gives you that process. It gives you their sometimes their insight to how they afford this. So again, you can play around with different words as you explore this. Good. So open leads into that open question, and then of course you're into questioning. So that's why that sort of the question coming out of the opening is important, because it really sort of sets the tone. And you can do a great opening, but if you go with a closed question, sometimes it can just are you happy to be here? No. And you can almost see that then takes you down a completely different path, because now versus sort of, okay, so you mentioned to Patricia this, and this. Tell me a little bit more about that. So again, you build. There are really two openings saying that. There's the initial opening, and that's almost like a new patient. Actually, and I'm going to change that. That just hit me. It's almost a new patient opening. Um, it could also be a new treatment with an existing patient opening, but it's that
Mhm.
new opening, and then there's the sort of the follow-up opening. And the reason why I differentiate those is the new patient opening is a lot more about discovery. So that's where that opening is, very much about setting the tone, setting the expectations, the process, what's going to happen, how things are going to flow, what to expect, etc. And then the question coming out of that again is really about that motivation, the motivation to be here, the motivation maybe for a different treatment. The follow up opening, and this is why you'll see the loop. Every time you have an interaction, you follow the same process. So the follow-up opening is based on the fact that you're following up. You've had that conversation, and now you're re-establishing that. You're picking up from last time. So almost think of it in terms of the simplest way of thinking about it is, let's say they came for an initial consultation, but they didn't book. And for whatever reason, they didn't. But they then came back for a second consultation. That second consultation, i.e., that is more about. So last time we spoke about this. So it's almost the when you're watching Netflix, a series, it's you always get the what happened last time.
Yeah.
So think of it in that's the follow-up opening is what happened last time? Where are we up to? And therefore, let's continue from there. And again, as you come out of the opening, you continue with you then with an open question. So it's that sort of set the tone, but also recap where we are and then build on that. If they're truly an existing patient and they keep coming back, then again, it's that follow-up opening is great to see you. Last time we spoke about, or last time you had 40 units of Botox, whatever that treatment was, you were concerned about this. So you can see again, even with an existing patient, you're setting the tone, you're recapping, and then an open question. So what brings you in today? There's your big, broad, open question. And it may be they want, it's as simple as, it's been 3 months, 4 months, they need Botox. So what brings you in today? Well, I'm just refreshing on my Botox. Good. And again, what else is happening in life? Especially as you start to build that relation, what else is happening in life? And you can then go forward on that basis. With plastic surgery, it's slightly different, obviously, with because it's more of a bigger procedure. But again, if we think about lifetime value, various treatments or procedures, operations happen at different stages in life. so again, it could be they're having this procedure in their 40s, and in 10 years time they're going to have a different procedure. But again, if they're in the neighborhood and they've had a good experience, they're going to come back, and therefore it continues in the same way. Mm-hmm. Looks like you had a question there.
Mm-mm.
No.
No.
So initial, they're very similar. It's just recognizing for me, the key thing is, regardless of if we know them or don't know them, we want to open the call. We want to open the consultation with an opening, leading into an open question. And that's really what because so often people think I get the first time, but the second time it's literally, okay, where are we? What's happening? Right. And it just feels a little bit rushed. And for me, it's all about taking them on a journey.
Yeah.
And the open with an open question. Again, what this allows us to do. So I always say, you've got this is more now the initial, I'm sorry, the follow-up opening. If you fully understood the motivation, and you're starting now to get into the detail, especially with an existing patient, and I see this with plastic surgery, they come for a consult, they may go round 2 or 3 other locations, but they come back to you. You want to remind them then in the opening, the follow-up opening, about their motivation, but you're now entitled to go straight into more detail. So you don't have to go through the funnel, because you might have already got a lot of the information from the motivation. You might have some of the detail. And so now the follow-up opening allows you to pick up at the point in the questioning funnel at the right point. So you don't have to start at the top of the questioning funnel. If you've got that information, and again, it could be they've had a consult, you're now following up to them 2 days later, 3 days later, they wanted to go and talk about this with their partner. They wanted to go and explore XYZ. So you're now following up again. When you pick up the phone, it's the sorry follow up opening, but now you're into now the detail of what's going on. So again, you don't need to start from the top. You come in at the right point, and the opening allows you to do that.
Mhm.
So let's put this. I want to put this into now the whole framework, because I think then it will now start to make a lot more sense. So we have the open, we have the question. Once you've got all the questions in place, that's when you then move into educate. And I often think education is optional to some extent. But within the context of aesthetic medicine, plastic surgery, the educate can be quite a powerful stage. And I don't really touch on education as part of this. I'm just putting that in the process because that's the medicine side. That's,
Yeah.
letting them know I can never say the word contraindications, what to expect, how the treatment
Right.
works. That's very much that sort of educate piece. And then back to the sales process, this is where we then have the suggestion. So the suggestion is based on what you've told me, this is what I recommend. And we're going to touch this suggestion stage next time in a lot more detail. But that's now where you make the proposition in terms of this is the treatment plan, this is what we're recommending. Now, again, some of this you start, the doctor or the surgeon comes in, they're going to need to do their piece. um, if they can follow the same flow, it makes the patient feel very comfortable. So if if the doctor can do an opening, I know you've spoken with Gina and you've covered these things. The other thing I like here is the baton pass. So if you, as the patient coordinator, have done, you've uncovered all of this information, when you then go in with into the surgeon, and have that part of the consult, the baton pass is in front of the patient. So this is Samantha. Her daughter's getting married in the fall and really wants to look, glamorous for the photos, whatever. We've talked about this, and this. She's interested in, da da da. So you can lay that out for the surgeon. The reason why that's important is because when I've when I've carried out mystery shopping, what I find is it's that it's that very much that sort of hospital um, experience otherwise, which is a nurse asks you a question or a bunch of questions, then someone else comes along and asks you the same
Yeah.
questions, and then the doctor turns up and asks the same questions, and you're left feeling, do they know what's going on?
Right.
And I do understand there's a piece here that says we need to ask those questions from a medical point of view, but sales is, in a cash base in plastic surgery, it's all emotion. So the baton pass with the surgeon is really important, but he can still do an opening. He can still ask additional questions, get into a different level of detail, thinking about that funnel again, more detail, more specific to his or her role in this, can still educate beyond what you've done. And then again, back into that sort of, I suggest this. So again, I'm giving you that flow in terms of how it works. And
I
then,
have a question.
yeah,
When we're educating and then saying based on X, Y, and Z, this is what I recommend, you're creating that personal treatment plan. So, is there any sales literature or research on the actual piece that you're providing for them? So, whether it's just a quick quote with drop downs of pricing or a personal treatment plan that is maybe a good best, good better best, and has a little bit more detailed information. Is there any research on which is better, what the patient responds to better, anything like that?
Really great question. Um, so one of the things I want to weave into the next three sessions is what's called social styles, and um, and there isn't one simple answer to that because different people will want different things. So I like the vision. So if I go back to my tech expert this morning, he just said, well, actually, it was yesterday, we can do this. It's using this system. It's the same price as you're paying, but it gives us so much more. And I can get it done in 4 to 6 hours. It was like, it was big picture. And I went, yes, do it. Bang, and our whole reporting system was decided on in that sort of dialogue via a text message. Um, but then that's me. So if you give me lots of information, and if you're selling to me, and you were to go, okay, the procedure is going to start at 9 a.m. in the morning. We're going to make an incision here. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. And sort of I'm going to an extreme, but sort of break it down in terms of what the procedure is going to entail, then I'm going to run a mile. It's going to be too much because I just want to know I'm going to look great within my expectations that we've discussed. Similarly, if someone loves detail, then you're absolutely right. They're going to want the detail. And one of the things I've trained for over the years is as a coach, as an executive coach. Um, and I once had this executive, and just in talking to her, I realized right at the very beginning, she wanted detail. She wanted precision and lots of it. And it's the only time, because as a coach, I don't have literature per se. It's very much, are we, they call it a beauty parade. Are we a good match, as a coach and coachee to work together? But I recognized she needed more. And I actually was running out of what can I give her. And I actually sent her my master's dissertation for her to read. And she read it. And apart from my professor, who graded my work, she's the only other person I believe in the world that's read my dissertation. It sits in the library at Henley Business School in the UK for someone to one day maybe look at, but I doubt it's been read. But she read it cover to cover, and she said, "You made some very interesting points." And it was because she wanted the detail. So I know that's not the I know sometimes we like answers, simple answers. So again, it's recognizing who you have and what they need for them to be satisfied. And so again, sometimes sometimes it's good to sort of have what I call the one pager. So that could be maybe the trifold, but then there's sort of more detailed, maybe a 2-page document or a folder with some more literature in there. And you don't need to give that out every time. You give that to the people that need more. So,
Okay.
and you probably see that on the back of this, you give people detailed instructions post care, and
Right,
some will follow it because they're detailed and some won't. And
right,
I'm the one that doesn't follow it, but then phones up 5 minutes later and go, what do I need to do? And you're saying, did you not read the document? It's like, yes, there's lots to read. It's too much.
right,
And you roll your eyes, as we all do, and think, this is important stuff. You should be taking care of yourself. But
right.
it's,
Most people don't, I will say.
yes, yeah. And again, some of that's the fast-paced life we lead. They want to consume it in text messages or short, sharp, drop downs. Again, the other thing in the questioning stage, so if we come back to questioning, this is what information do you need to feel comfortable in making the decision? So again, if we think about the funnel, specific open questions,
Yeah.
um, what information do you need? And so with that executive, it's like, how do you make a decision? What do you need? Well, they tell you, and that's where this becomes, in a way, easy, because if you ask the questions, they will tell you. Um, um,
Yeah.
and again, I was working with it's Vodafone in the UK, but think of Vodafone. I don't think Vodafone are in the US, but they're big in Europe and in the UK. But think of it as AT&T Mobile. And I was talking with an executive there, and I kind of we I don't know, we got to a point where we had a great conversation, but there was something missing. Um, and I just said to him, it was almost coming to an end, and I'm thinking, I don't know where to go with this. It's just great conversation. It's just not going anywhere. And I then just sort of, what question were you expecting to me to ask that I haven't asked? um, and he said, and he sort of confirmed what I said. It's been a really great conversation, Chris, but I'm surprised you didn't ask me this. And he had a question. And so I then just repeated verbatim the question. So he said, "This is. I'm surprised you didn't ask me this." I then just played back that question, and it was bizarre because he went, "That's a really great question. I don't think I've thought of the answer to this." And I'm just thinking, hang on, you just told me the question and you haven't, and it was just bizarre.
Right.
But he was just like, "You haven't told me the answer to this. Sorry, I hadn't thought of this." And he said, "Chris, that's a great," and he almost gave me credit for the question. And and it was bizarre, very bizarre, even just thinking about it now. And then he went on to answer it, and then suddenly the floodgates opened, and from there, actually, there was an opportunity, and we did a deal. But it all came from that. So if you're not sure what you think they need to positively decide to move forward with, your practice and your surgeon, ask them, what haven't we what haven't we spoken about that's important to you? What else should we be discussing? How do you feel about this at this stage? Because again, the more we can uncover, the easier it becomes. And and so then the final stage after suggestion is that's where we close. Not always close the deal, it's close the conversation, gain commitment to move forward.
Mhm.
Um, so quite often, people will say, I want to go and think about this. And we often say, okay, I'll give you a call, in a few days. Is that good? So again, we'll cover close in more detail, but close tend to use close questions because now you want commitment. Can I, is it okay to call you in a few days? And the answer, of course it is. And then you phone and they ghost you.
Right.
So for me, when we do things like that, is about locking them down. When shall I call you in a few days? Let's look at I'll give you a call when on Thursday is good. And then it's 2 p.m. or 4 p.m. And lock them down. Now they can still ghost, but if we've got that scheduled, the chances of them picking up it becomes greater. They're thinking about it, and again, if you can sort of put it into some scheduling system, so it sends them a little text reminder or things of that nature, that can sort of help. So again, we'll cover that. The final thing I then want to sort of cover is I present this almost as a linear path: open, question, educate, suggest, close. The reality is we can jump around, and we we end up, sometimes we're in the opening stage, and then we find ourselves having to do a little bit of education to move them into a place where we can then ask some questions. We may start asking questions, and the answers then become, especially in the specifics, a little bit stilted because they need to know a little bit more about what the treatment might look. So you then educate. There may even be some suggestions, based on what you're saying so far. I'm thinking it could be this. But before we get into too much detail, we come back to asking more questions. So uh, it is a process, but you can be fluid with that. But recognize where you are, and just because you're then moving into educating and suggesting, it doesn't mean you're now in that stage. You may still need to come back to questions. You may not have all the questions that you need. And that can sometimes be driven by the patient. You start asking questions and it says, yes, but you know, I'm looking for a mummy makeover. What does that entail? And how much is that going to be? And what's my downtime? You have to answer those questions because you can't ignore them, but you want to answer them, in a short, succinct way and not get dragged into that conversation. Because as soon as they start asking you questions and you're listening, oh, sorry, as soon as they start asking questions and you're answering, they now have control over the conversation. The control is through the questions. So if they are asking, you're answering, they then ask, you answer, and then they get to a point where I think I have all the information I need. Let me come back to you. They've got total control.
Yeah.
So you have to sometimes wrestle that back. And the way we do that is short answers, short, succinct, to the point answers, and then wheel it back into the questions and gain control there. What questions do you have?
Nothing. No questions.
All makes
Yeah.
sense?
Mm-hmm.
Good. That's it for me.
Yeah. Good.
What are you going to do? What are you going to work on for the next couple of weeks?
Um, I think where I could use some help is asking more questions, asking more insightful questions, more open-ended questions, taking more time in the question part of the sales conversation. Sometimes with and everybody's different. So no consult is the same. I mean, some people, they sit down in the chair. I'm here for Botox. I've had Botox before and I just need a little bit here. What do you charge? Like so it's reeling them in, bringing them back to the open, the credential and all of that. So, and some patients are open to sitting here chatting and they're very open to the questions and people love talking about themselves and they want to share and other people don't. So I think it's just having more of a system, getting used to asking more of these open-ended questions that are going to help the close.
So let's just take that. If you're happy with that, let's just take that. I'll be the patient, and I just say, I'll take your scenario. So, um, I just need my 11s and a little bit of, the some of the lines gone on my forehead. How many units do you think that's going to be, and how much?
So if you just plopped in my chair and said that, I would say, I would love to learn more about you first, if you don't mind. Is that okay? And ask them if that's okay. And a lot of times they
No.
say yes. Okay, great. So I would circle back. How long have these lines been bothering you? Just more of the discovery and have you tried anything? And do you have any occasions coming up? And um, you know, how do you feel about these lines when you look in the mirror? So just kind of asking those questions more first. And then also, I think, which is an important part of our consultation is, which we haven't touched too much on, is just more credentialing our providers in
Yeah.
our center. So, you know, we've been here since 1997. We have AMI allergen trainers training other physicians in how to inject. So really just telling them that they've came to the right place first. And so many people appreciate that too. So getting answers to all those questions, extending that credibility to our center, to our providers, um, I think that in turn helps them make that decision. I came to the right place. You're telling me that the results are going to be efficient, it's going to be safe, it's going to be by a registered provider. You do these all day long. This is how it makes me feel. You're going to tell me that it's going to make me feel more youthful, look more youthful. It's going to help me feel more confident. So just going back there and then like kind of like you said, get back to the question or get back to that part of the sales conversation where they already kind of took themselves to the suggestion right away.
Yeah. So let's just pick that apart a little bit. So some of that credentialing you want to put into the open,
Yes.
set the tone. Um, you then you then said, "Can I can't remember your exact words, but can I go into a little bit more detail first?" You don't want to ask that because it runs the risk of no. And
I've never
then
had somebody say no because
no,
that's why they're here, right? I mean, they're here
true,
because they need that information. So, um,
true. So I
I
totally,
feel like you're not really asking that question to get an answer. You're asking that question to make them understand that I want to learn more about you. I want to help you. I want to ensure that I'm educating you on the right process. I'm qualifying you for a treatment here that makes
yeah,
the most sense, that's going to meet your expectations. So I guess for me, it's more of an open-ended question, but it's not essentially because they could say no. I just have never had that experience before.
no. So this is not about them. This is about you getting doing more open questions. So, and it's a subtlety. You're right. Most people, if you ask them an open question, so if I said, and I've used this example, is the weather nice where you are today? Most people will go, yes, it's sunny, it's mid 50s, mid 60s, it's light fluffy clouds, blue sky, or no, and it's raining. So most people expand on that. I grant you that. This isn't about them. This is about training you to get into the habit of more open questions, because more open questions opens the dialogue, and it allows you to control the conversation. So you're absolutely right. Most people are will expand on a yes or no. However, it's more, as I say, for you to just get into that premise of asking open questions, because the more you do, the better the consult becomes. So, and often the question is exactly the right question. It's not the question; it's just it's missing. So, um, and also the other piece here is it's the psychology. The only time you really want to give them the decision yes or no is when you're closing them at the end, when you're gaining commitment to move forward with a treatment, move forward with surgery, move forward in whatever that is. That's the only time you really want to giving them a decision. Otherwise you want to be in control. So if you're giving them, there was one of my first ever sales training courses I went on was, you ask them questions that then they answered yes to. And if they then say, does the sun come up every day, even if there's clouds? Yes. And you get them saying yes every time. And then you say, do you want to buy? Yes. That, you know, that was 30 years ago and it doesn't work. Or it's very transactional. Where this is about the sophistication. So yes, I'm being pedantic, but it's about getting you asking the questions, open questions. Um, you When you gave some examples, you had sort of some specific questions, and then there was the motivational question. So again, just get that. What what event do you have coming up? What special occasions do you have? And it feels slightly strange because it's very assumptive, but sales is about an assumption. The assumption is they're there to evaluate you as a provider or a practice and to decide yes. So, so therefore, that's the assumption, and it's about recognizing that as well. So if you would then say, so logically, because you want to be polite, do you have a special occasion coming up? Is the more logical approach, because you don't know if they do. But the question we want to ask is, what special occasions do you have coming up? um, that I need to be aware of, or what plans do you have in the future that might impact this surgery that I should be aware of? Um, you're just making the assumption, because the other thing here is, if you then just say, do you have a special, again, I see it so often, do you have an occasion coming up? No. And then suddenly we're at the end of the process, and it's like, I can schedule you for 3 weeks time. It's like, oh no, I'm going to Europe for a couple of weeks. It's like, and then you sort of say, well, hang on, I asked you, have you got any occasions coming up? And you said no. Now, we don't challenge them there, but there is that sort of logic that said, I asked you this, but they didn't. That's not a special occasion. That's just a business trip. So again,
Right.
asking those open questions allows them to explore. What special occasions do you have coming up? Well, I don't have any special occasions, but I do have a trip to Europe in 3 weeks. So again, so yeah, I think play on those.
Okay.
Listen to the question. Um, I always say, as you become really hyper aware, you start going down, is the weather nice? And then suddenly you go, what's the weather like? You find yourself as,
Right.
you know, do you have a special occasion? I mean, what I mean by that is, what special occasions do you have coming up? And you start on the fly correcting. Do not worry about that. They won't recognize that, but you'll then start getting into that habit, and you'll then start having bigger dialogue and more dialogue.
Yep. Great.
Excellent. I'll see you in a couple of weeks or so.
2 weeks. Okay. Thank you, Chris.
Enjoy. Thank you.
You
You
too.
take care. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.